So, hello everybody. I am Patrick Smith here again at the West Virginia Game Developers Expo 2020, also in cooperation with the West Virginia Cybersecurity Expo. And we are sponsored still here by Remake West Virginia, an Epic Mega Grants recipient, as well as Mount West Community and Technical College. For this session today, we have Aaron Preece here. Aaron, you are with I just lost the name of it.
It's the American Foundation for the Blind. The American Foundation for the Blind, and I'm the
Yes.
editor of AFB's Access World Technology magazine.
Fantastic. So, Aaron is going to talk about accessibility because Aaron is legally blind. And if you want the most people to be able to play your games, you need to make sure that all the people can play your games. So, Aaron, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll go ahead and show the clips that you want. Just let me know when, and it's all yours, sir.
All right, I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm here today to talk about game accessibility and how you can make different games accessible, but also basically to showcase what's been done in the area of game accessibility I would say for the longest time. Pretty much no games were accessible by default. Some games, like fighting games, like the old Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, were pretty accessible. They had some stereo audio, so you could tell if your character was on the left or your character was on the right, that sort of thing. So if you memorize the character screen and you memorize the menus, you would be able to play those games. But for the longest time, nothing was really made accessible by default. Now that is changing a lot over the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years. And I wanted to show their games that have been either modded by the community by either the blind community or by people in the sighted community to make games accessible for people that are blind or low vision, or in some cases adapted by the company itself from the ground up to be accessible. So that in that second category, the first game to be, I would say, really the first game to be fully completable without any sighted assistance whatsoever by someone that is blind or visually impaired is The Last of Us 2. Not a game I've been able to play personally because it is a PlayStation exclusive, but it has many accessibility features for all different disabilities. But a landmark, I think, is that it goes beyond just the sort of the low vision accessibility features, so high contrast, larger fonts, colorblind ability, that sort of thing, and goes into, I would say, probably a harder arena of making something accessible to someone that is only relying on audio to navigate the game. So you, like I said, many accessibility features in The Last of Us 2. Some features include, I'm going to focus specifically on those that are helpful that are blind. Navigation is a big one. It can automatically help you navigate from story point to story point, but also help you to seek out like side quests and other like interesting items and enemy in the. It has a sort of a radar to tell you when you're trying to focus toward an item or a person or an enemy. It can give you audio cues to where that person is, like left to right, sort of side to side, but also using pitch up and down. It has some what I would consider almost, with such a complicated game, some accessibility features are ways of jumping over parts that are not fully accessible at the moment. So like there's a mode where you get over puzzles automatically. There's a mode, so something that's more difficult for someone that's blind is knowing, say, like where a ledge is. So there's no audio cue there to tell you that the ledge is there. So they've added either what they call ledge protection or ledge guard to help you make sure you don't accidentally fall off of a ledge. They've allowed you to modify the enemy's behavior. So like if you grapple an enemy, they made it where you can set it so the enemy doesn't break free. They've made it so your allies can't get grappled. They've made it so your some of the decisions by the AI that would make the combat more difficult, especially spatially. So if enemies trying to flank you or enemies circling you, that sort of thing, you can modify all those. So like I said, lots and lots of accessibility features, and it's really a landmark a landmark development. And what's important about it is that the accessibility was added from the ground up and not added on later, which makes it a much easier to add to the game when it's thought of from the beginning and incorporated in the game design. To be tacked on later, we have this game and now we have all these things, and how do we make this accessible and how do we make this accessible? Thinking of it from the ground up really makes things a lot easier on the developers. And we do have a video showing these accessibility actions if you want to run that.
Dina, this way. Maybe I'll make it to 73.
Sign us in.
What was this place?
It used to be a radio tower.
Hold the perimeter until we hear otherwise. Keep an eye out in case he comes this way.
I got something. Shit. Get in there.
Okay, so we showed about 2 minutes of that there, showing the different areas, different HUDs and stuff like that. So for people out there too, keep in mind, like, you really have to hone in to that different volumes. Like I noticed, you were talking about, Aaron, the obstacle stuff. There was a subtle noise that told you were hitting an obstacle. Later on, when they found a rope, there was a subtle noise of like a rope tightening. So those were all cool techniques to let somebody know where those different things were in the environment.
And that's something like for a lot of games, there are a lot of games that people will try to play and kind of work their way through, and that's basically what they rely on. And again, this game has actually made these more prominent, but that's how people have to play a lot of. If you're trying to play a video game, you're going to be listening for the sound effects of the environment and that sort of thing to identify that.
Aaron, you may try to turn off your video just because there's some subtle like audio distortions, and so we want to make sure we can hear your speech. So let's see if maybe that works better to go ahead and have a clear audio.
Does it sound better now?
Yeah. So far it sounds great. Yeah, you were cut down just a little bit, so I was hoping this would help on the bandwidth.
And I can always switch to my hotspot if need be. Just let me know.
Okay.
So that's a game that's been developed from the ground up to be accessible, and there's a couple others. I would say Skullgirls, the fighting game, is one of those where the developer like I said, fighting games are pretty accessible in general. And so the developer of Skullgirls went in and made his game have, and that's something that wasn't shown in that video, but you can also set text to speech. So anything visual text wise that comes up or in your HUD and things like that, those can all be read aloud with text to speech. And so like with Skullgirls, basically all he needed to do was make all of his menus read, characters display, story text, that sort of thing. He made that read with a text to speech, and that made the game pretty much fully playable and fully accessible. The other ways that games have been made accessible, and I would say more commonly, games have been made accessible by modding by the community. So The next game I'm going to show is called Slay the Spire. It's sort of a card deck building, sort of collectible card game merged with a roguelike. I think like Binding of Isaac would be considered like a modern roguelike. So sort of an interesting fusion of genres. And because it's a turn-based game, basically by adding speech to everything in the game, text-to-speech readouts of everything in the game, someone was able to make it completely and entirely accessible to someone that's blind. There's no difference in a blind person playing the game as a sighted person. It might take a little longer, and it's a little more complicated. But I guess based on the story I heard, the guy, his girlfriend, wanted to play Slay the Spire, so he made a mod for it and made it completely accessible, and then shared it with the community. And now it's exploded in the blindness community because it's so accessible. So the way it works is, instead of looking at what's displayed on the screen and clicking different things, you have a series of sort of invisible windows that pop up to provide different information for you. So you have any kind of choices you would make. There's a choices window. Any kind of whatever you're fighting monsters, there's a monsters window that has all the information that you would need to know about the monsters. And this will make more sense when we show the video. And you use text commands. So instead of clicking something, I would type start Ironclad to start with the Ironclad character, to start the game. Or if I want to play a card, my cards are numbered 1 through however many, and I would just press that number, and then maybe if I need to target it at a specific enemy, I would press like 1 and then 0 to target it at the first enemy. So there's a lot of keyboard commands that you use to navigate. And again, it's kind of complicated, but there, to even make it easier, someone else made a secondary program that runs on top of the mod. So instead of having to cycle through all these different windows, everything's read automatically, and I can, if I need to shuffle between windows, I can use Alt and the arrow keys and just cycle quickly between the windows without having to leave the prompt area. And that makes things significantly easier to navigate and manage. Like I said, it's a lot of windows with all the different types of information. So it probably sounds kind of confusing. So let's go ahead and let's run the first part of the video.
Okay.
Slay the Spire.
And something to keep in mind is I would actually be going a lot faster through this. The speech that I use is significantly faster. I switched it to the Cortana voice for this to make it a lot more understandable for everyone and slow down the speed quite a bit.
So it occurred to me that I was just talking, Aaron, and you couldn't hear me. I was muted. But I said you slowed it down for us mere mortals who cannot listen to the text-to-speech as fast as you can, because you've done it for quite a while, right?
Yeah, probably 20 years or more at this point.
Yeah. So, I'll go back and continue to play this.
Ironclad 1. The Silent One. Defect 1. Watcher locked. Commands. Start class Ascension Seed. Daily. History. Slot. Quit. Output. Choices. Prompt. Prompt. Edit blank. Choices.
So see, it's invisible.
Player.
I believe, at least.
Empty. Monster. Relic.
Now I'm cycling between windows.
Space. Speak typed characters off.
So I'm typing in, starting with the Ironclad.
Player. Health, 80/80. Gold 99. Potions. Potion slot. Relic. Monster. Player. Choices. Output. Output. Meow event.
So you can go ahead and skip past this if you want to where the map starts. I think it's 322. You want to pause there, maybe?
Choices. Meow event. 1. Leave. Choices.
All right.
Return.
Go ahead and pause.
Score 0. 1 monster 0.
Okay, so this is the map, and so the one thing about Slay the Spire, if you've ever played it, it kind of gives you most of the information that you would need to know. It's a very forward planning, I guess you'd say, type of game. It's you're always told the sort of the consequences of your actions when you make a choice. Also, like when you're fighting an enemy, you're going to know ahead of time what the enemy's going to do, so you can kind of prepare for it. So that's sort of the game style. So part of that is you get to see the map for the current floor that you're on. I guess these are considered floors, but I think they're more like rooms, I believe, on a single floor. So we have 1 through 15 and different paths we can take. So when he starts the video up, I'm cycling. I typed the command map to show, since the map's on the screen, it will show me the map. And I can then cycle through and read through every single floor and all the choices I would need to make. And it'll kind of let me kind of plan my route my route as I proceed through the spire. You want to go ahead and start it?
Hey, Aaron, I was going to mention for a second. You know, earlier when I think you said you were typing "Start Ironclad" at the menu screen.
Yep.
What was interesting was we were still seeing the menu screen, and I think you were selecting something different because the text reader was telling you were, but visually to us, it was still the Slay the Spire menu screen, which was interesting. Like it must have been a different window behind or different commands you were typing.
Yeah, it's basically a series of invisible windows and an invisible prompt. So it just essentially it's when I type in, it's interpreting that and like sort of I guess clicking on the region. Like if you would normally click on the ironclad, by typing that in, it clicks on it for you essentially. And that's how that's how the entire game's played. Is I'm typing, so like you can see the map, I'm sure right now. But for me to do so, I need to type in the command map, and then I need to go to the output window and start scrolling up and down with my arrow keys to read the map. And then we'll see a path. There's a path feature I'll show here in a second, and lets me plot out a path and tells me which basically which floors or which paths I would need to take as I go through the floors.
Okay, I was just curious.
But that's how the entire game is played, is all through these invisible windows. And
so it's almost like for us, I guess it's like seeing a game being played without seeing the mouse cursor and knowing where they're clicking. It's moving automatically. Okay, just curious.
Were you going to say something, or did I lose you all?
No, sorry. I keep on muting my mic so that it doesn't pick up the audio for when I play this. So I was just saying that we're gonna see it play without the mouse ever move, and so it's going to be automated. So for us, we just know that you're having to type in these invisible windows that's causing it to go ahead and go to the next screen and that type of thing. So just so the audience, when they're watching this, are like, what's actually happening? I don't see anything happening. They won't, because they're invisible windows, like you were saying.
Output. Type. Skill.
Yep.
Output. Hexaghost current equals floor 0, x 0. Rest floor 15 x 2. Rest floor 15 x 5. Rest floor 15 x 6. Blank. Monster floor 14 x 1. Rest floor 13 x 0. Blank. Unknown floor 12 x 5.
And then this is where, if we were going to continue, I basically go through the entire map from top to bottom. But if we skip to 425, that's where I'll show you how the path command works.
Output. Unique paths 10 elite 1, rest 2, unknown 2, monster 4, monster 1 4, monster 2 5, unknown 3 6, monster 4 6, monster 5, monster 1 4, monster 2 5, unknown 3 6, monster 4 6, monster 5 6, elite 6 6, monster 1 4, monster 1 4, monster 2 5, elite 1, monster 1 4, rest 2, unknown 1, monster 6, monster 1 4, monster 2 5. Choices. Blank.
And if you want to go
2 monster 4.
So I made my choice. If you want to skip to
Monster
710, we can see how when I'm in a fight with a monster, how I can see my hand, and how I can also like read about cards in my hand when I'm fighting a monster.
Strike 1 4. Output. Bash basic cost 2 type. Attack deal 8 damage. Apply 2 vulnerable.
So I'm going to use that.
Energy 1. Monster. Count 0. Incoming 0. Play.
So that finished that fight off. I
Relic.
can pick
1
gold.
player. Choices 1 gold.
Look at my switch. So that was me switching over to the choices window so I can look at what I've got.
Choices. Skip. 1 perfected strike. 2 iron wave.
And so from there, I could actually look at I could type in like C1 to read what the first card is, or C2 to read what the second card is before I make my choice.
Floor 2, X5. 1 monster 4. 2 unknown 6.
Go ahead and pause for a second. So you'll encounter events in this game, and they will give you, there's all kinds of different things it could be. So sometimes you'll find a statue and you can either pray at it or you could smash it and get all kinds of gold from it. In this particular case, we're going to run into a lab, and there's an event command. So if I want to read whatever the text is that comes up on the screen and describes what I'm doing, I can do that. And then again, the choices actually tell you, like, it'll say smash the, in this case, you just take potions. There's no downside to this particular event, but sometimes it'll be like pray at the statue, gain 5 health, smash the statue, gain 90 gold. So you know ahead of time what your choice is going to be. And I can read the result of that in kind of the flavor text for those events. If you want to go ahead and
Choices.
play that.
Lab. Choices. 1. Search find some potions.
See, it tells me I found potions, but I want to see like where am I? I'm kind
Now
of
you
curious
find
what the flavor
yourself
text
in a
here.
room filled with racks of test tubes, beakers, flasks, forceps, pinch clamps, stirring rods, tongs, goggles, funnels, pipettes, cylinders, condensers, and even a rare spiral tube of glass. Why do you know the name of all these tools? It doesn't matter. You take a look around.
And now I can take the potions.
Choices. Proceed. 1 smoke bomb. 2 fairy in a bottle. 3 fruit juice.
And I'm just going to take all those.
Choices. 1 fairy in a... Choices.
And updates.
Choices. Player. Fruit juice.
And that is really, like I said, it's kind of confusing because I am interacting with it in a very different way than someone would be normally. But I'm able to play the entire game that way. I have no, I guess, like no disadvantage when I play Slay the Spire. My success or failure is up to myself. It's not anything that the game is doing right or wrong to make it accessible or not accessible to me. So that's a major accomplishment, and that's something you could apply to a lot of games. I would think something like Hearthstone or any kind of like online Magic the Gathering or any other type of card game like that, or any primarily choice-based or turn-based games like that. It's pretty easy to do. I mean, that's a pretty unique solution, but you could make a lot of games accessible that way. The next game is a more action-oriented game, and this is another, I guess you would say, class of accessible games. Just plain old audio games, so everything is presented in audio. And I picked one today that actually has a visual portion to it. I can't quite tell. I think I've got the visual aspects turned on. But it's a sort of a blind version recreation of the game, the space sort of trading game from it's called Elite. Elite Dangerous would be the modern version. Came out like 10 years ago, something like that. Very complex space trading. You can be a pirate, you can be a smuggler, you can mine asteroids. You can do missions for people. I think there's like 10 in the blindness version. It's called New Horizons, and I think there's something like 10,000 total star systems you can explore. So it's a pretty large game. So what you'll see in this video is I'm at a space. I'm on a planet, and I sell some of my. I tend to spend my time bounty hunting. So I sell what I picked up bounty hunting. I take off, and it's sort of this game is played in sort of a top-down perspective. So even though you're in space, it's like a flat plane that you're driving on.
So where I think you were at is you were talking about you wanted to be a bounty hunter, and that this game used kind of a two-dimensional version of space. So you were starting to explain about what different shapes were different things in the game.
Yeah, so you're flying. It's like it's kind of it's not like a 3D perspective. You're flying kind of north, south, east, or west, and anywhere in between. And I think like so, none of this is going to come into play. But basically, like if I were to keep flying in one direction, I would just circle around to like the other side of the planet or what have you, or the other side of the star. To go from system to system, I use like a jump gate type of thing, like a little wormhole. And I can check, you'll hear me check, like once I launch, I want to go to another system. So I'll check, I can press a key and it will tell me, southeast system, such and such, danger, whatever, which tells me how many pirates are going to be there. Populations, it tells me how many ships are going to be there. It tells me how many bodies are there. So the star plus, and we'll say like unary system, or however many stars are there, that sort of thing. So it gives you all the information you would need to know about the star before you jump into the system. And so basically what I do is I take off. I sell my stuff I can sell on the planet at the planet. I take off, fly to another system, and land on a space station, sell some more stuff there, take off again, and go fight some pirates. And I think there's some visuals here, so that might help understanding, because there's lots of different sounds, and I will try to explain as they come up what sounds mean.
Load game. Continue game. Planet Turn 8 welcomes safe pilots. Launch. Status.
So this is just the menu.
All 100%. Fuel 25. Credits 9,434. Click for status page. Sell goods.
I want to sell some stuff.
Click item to sell 1 unit. Coffee. Profit 27. 2 remaining. All sold. Chocolate. Profit 27. 1 remaining. Status. Launch. Heading southeast.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Leaving atmosphere.
And that was me speeding up. That was my speed, that secondary voice.
South.
South.
So I'm
Danger 8.
turning.
Population 3. Liberty faction. Alien system border 13.
So I don't want to go there, so I'll keep turning.
Southwest. Danger 6. Population 5. Liberty faction. Nirgua system. Border 24.
So I'm going to open a vortex, and that now I'm in the other system.
Pride 200.
West.
Freeport to left.
So I'm trying to find that Freeport.
Aaron primary
this is-
ahead.
I'm going to pause for just a second.
Freeport to right. Freeport beyond.
So like the do like that tells me the nearest. Oftentimes it's like the nearest. So if I like get into a sun or something or a star and I want to get out of there, that'll tell me like the closest distance to get out of the star. The kind of sound, like that's saying, oh, there's a pirate just jumped into the system. Watch out. And then the kind of the rumbly sounds all around, those are all other ships. You might be able to see those. I'm not honestly sure. Like I said, I couldn't really quite tell if the visuals were there or not, but you might be able to see other ships flying around. And basically what I'm trying to do is line up on this Freeport and land on it. And something the ship that I'm flying can do is it can like barrel roll basically, or do like a flip. So you will see me like use my sort of like jump drive or like my overdrive to go really quickly towards it, or even past it, and then flip over and then come back at it from a different angle to try to land it more quickly. So I'm not like slowly using my sublight engines to fly towards it. I can't get away, and then stuff can come on and kind of pick me off as I'm trying to land.
I will tell you, from when you were flying towards a circle, and then as you flew towards that circle, another circle above it at about 1 o'clock showed
Yep,
up.
smaller probably.
And so, honestly, it looks bigger.
Oh, I wonder if
You're now
one's the
you're getting
planet.
closer to a bigger circle, but you are to the west of it, kind of the slight, 7 o'clock southish west. But you're about to fly by it, and another planet is completely in your your rear. 6 o'clock.
Yeah, so that's how you can see, and you'll see me kind of like pass it, flip over, I think, and then come back towards it. I do a little kind of jumping around because there's a lot of stuff comes into view here. There's like a sun at one point. There's the planet. There's the space station I'm trying to land on. There's quite a bit going on right here.
Terran. Freeport. Terran to right.
So now that's my overdrive. Now I'm
Medium
flipping.
to right.
There's the star,
Medium on Terran. Medium. Terran to
and it's past
Freeport
the
set.
star.
No
Now
jump
there's the
Freeport.
and there's a pirate.
Freeport 200.
I'm checking the distance. I'm just going to coast in.
Entering docking field.
Now I'm in the docking field. Now to slow down and land.
Nearport Freeport welcomes all creatures of commerce.
And I just saw a few things here. You can skip past if you'd like.
Well, I was going to say the pirate to us was like a blue circle, I think, because it looked like it was a moon. It was orbiting the planet as you went into the planet. So we saw what looked like an orange circle, but now you're on a much larger circle, so that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm on the space station now.
Yeah, and so we're going to go to 315. Okay.
And that's just because I just sell stuff, so it's the same exact thing as before. So, because you have to sell certain things on the space station, certain things on planets. So.
Medium ahead.
So I'm flying away with my overdrive. And now I'm actually going to refuel real quickly.
Entering
pirate.
Pearl.
So you can refuel from stars. And
Leaving
now I'm
Pearl.
getting shot at, so I'm trying to get out of there. And that ding, 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 that's telling me there's, yeah, this is getting,
Bounty 6. Firearms 94. Entering Corona.
police are stealing my contraband.
Leaving Corona.
I'm flying away.
Northwest. Danger 4. Population 3. Liberty Faction. China's system. Vortex 32.
Jump to another system.
OBS 2. Oh,
Okay, and you can. So it gets kind of chaotic. And honestly, it took me a while to get into that game because there's so many sounds going on and there's so much just stuff flying around, and there's the sound effects are all kind of similar, lots of beeps and boops and different sounds. So you have to memorize what is the sound of picking up an item because you would hear like cotton, 250 or something like that. Because when I blow up a pirate, all their cargo goes scattering everywhere, and then I can go pick it up. So I had to listen for those kind of clunk sounds to know that I picked up the cargo. And then there's like a sort of a targeting radar, and it was like that super high pitch, really fast beeping. And that's how I could center the enemy ship to shoot at them. And when I did shoot at them, the pitch of my laser actually rises as it makes sort of there's like an undertone to it to let me know I'm hitting the opponent ship and not just shooting into the air. And then as they're I kind of picture it as like as their hull kind of heats up from the laser, basically as they take damage, the lower and lower their health goes, the higher and higher pitch that laser goes. And that's how I know if I'm, doing some damage to them, and if I need to, depending on what my health is like, do I need to run away or can I continue to shoot at them and finish them off? So it kind of gives you a sort of a dynamic indicator with the sound effect there.
So, Aaron, the first game we saw was The Last of Us 2, and they kind of pre-baked in their accessibility options. This one you just showed, you mentioned someone made this game from, whole cloth.
Yes.
They did it on their own, but its inspiration was another game. I have here loaded up for us Pokemon. Am I right in assuming that this is a mod that will play? Well, actually, Slay the Spire, I guess, was a mod as well. I forgot
Yep.
that one.
This is the
But
same
Pokemon,
thing. Yeah.
Pokemon has been modded, so they didn't make a whole new game. They just tried to go ahead and modify it or alter it to make it more accessible.
Yes, exactly. So this is Pokemon Crystal, and actually, so the funny thing is, so this is a mod over top of Pokemon Crystal. It lets me read all the text can be read out to some degree or another. I can also there's some footstep sounds, and like when you're on sort of like concrete or whatever, just traditional ground, it plays one sound. If I'm in tall grass where Pokemon are, it plays another sound. If I'm in water, it plays another sound, and I can like pathfind to stuff, and that's kind of what you'll hear is basically what happens in this. So Pokemon Crystal is the only Pokemon game that's accessible like this with an emulator. So what I've done over the last 5 years since this first came out is I have gone and I've found every and any accessible Pokemon Crystal hack that modifies the base game of Pokemon Crystal and played those because there's not very many other RPGs accessible to the blind right now. So I have been flooded with Pokemon Crystal hacks in the last couple of years, trying to find new games that way since they're accessible with these scripts, these mod. So this mod in particular, it might, if people are familiar with Pokemon, it might be confusing because it's called Pokemon Crystal Clear. So someone's gone in and it's a pretty large hack. So like your Pokemon will follow you. You'll see the Pokemon following me. You can basically what the person's done is they've gone in and they've made it where you can challenge. There's no roadblocks, so you can challenge the game in any form you'd like. So you can start with any gym you want. You can start in any area you want. And then you can also rematch gyms. So what I'm going to do here is basically I'm training my electric type, so I'm rematching the flying gym, which is traditionally the first gym, but I think I got it from like my third or fourth badge because I can just kind of pick and choose what I want to do when I want to do it. So that's what you'll see is me navigating to the gym, going in and fighting a couple gym trainers, and looking at the stats for my electric type. So you can tell it's a little different. Pink
2.0
swine.
baby Saturday
That's
night.
the logo.
Continue. Player Aaron. Badges 4. Pokédex 6. Time 12:16.
And you'll also see me speed up because there's a speed up button, and I will use that sometimes to speed things up. Just a second.
Pokédex. Skarmory 81/81. Fluffy 72/72. 22. Skarmory 81/81. 30.
Can you pause for just a second?
Fluffy.
So where this is a mod, it's not quite like it's kind of not always clear how you would do something. So like if I want to read all my like whatever Pokemon I'm focused on and their HP is read aloud to me, but if I want to get an overview of my entire team and what their levels are, there's a key to basically read all the text on the screen, and I will do that to read this, and I'll also use that to read stat screens and moves and that sort of thing.
7. Stats.
So stats.
0.18022 female. Fluffy. /Fluffy. EXP points. 72/72 7,740. Status /level up. OK 1085. Type / to 20.
So that's all kind of jumbled. But you basically, as you can kind of hear, all the text is there. It's just not in the proper order. So I have to figure out like basically memorized. Oh, it probably needs like 1,000 XP to the next level. It's electric type. Its status is okay. It doesn't have any status effects. But that's not all in order because it's just trying to read all the text however it's being presented to the mod, and you kind of have to figure it out based on that. It's not as clear as it could be.
Fluffy.
And you can skip. I basically keep going through her stats if you want to skip to that. Now we're on.
Violet Mart 10.
So I'm cycling.
13 left.
There's the gym. So I'm going to use the Pathfinder to get there.
Movie 3
That's
up.
good.
1 right.
You can hear the footsteps.
Movie
I'm
1
bumping
up.
into stuff, so I check it again.
Movie 2 left. 1 up. 2 left. 1 up. 1 down. 2 right.
So still using the Pathfinder, and I use it multiple times, because I can't memorize like 2 left, 5 up, 9 left, 8 right, 10 down,
Violet City.
all.
Signpost 1, 2 up, 1 right.
So now I'm going to challenge the gym. So I have to find that.
Violet City. Pokemon Gym. Leader. Winning trainers. Aaron. Would you like to re-challenge this? Re-challenge this gym? Yes. What set would you like to Set 3. Set 4. Set 3. What set would you like to challenge?
So I just go to the trainer.
Let me see if you Face Fox 8008 Bird
I'm kind of skipping. You saw it jump there because I'm speeding forward through it.
SPEAROW Sent out SPEAROW Go SPEAROW 16 male Flop Tackle
And I just check the
Growl.
level. It's like
Underway.
overrid itself.
Thunder Punch Floppy Use Thunder Punch. It's super. Enemy SPEAROW fainted. Floppy gained 198 EXP points. Bird. This can't be. Aaron got 380. Violet City. Signpost 1. Sign. Object 1. Janine. 9 up facing up. 1 right. FG.
And so that's
So I think that's where you want me to stop.
yeah, because I just fight him and basically thunder punch his birds into oblivion too. But so so you also heard like it said Janine up there, which the leader of this gym is not Janine, but because it is a hack, he is recycled and moved around the characters and stuff. So I have to kind of memorize because it is a hack. That does make it a little more difficult than what the base game would be because it's like stuff isn't always accurate. I was somewhere and when I was going to make this video, I hadn't played this particular version in a while, and I was like, well, where am I? And it said Fuchsia Pokemon Center, and I'm like, I'm in the middle of grass. That is not the case. Like, what in the world? Where? And so it's not always. You kind of have to figure out where you are and what would logically be in certain places, and based on, say, like people's dialogue sometimes with a hack like this, because it's not where they have shuffled things around. The scripts don't know that, so they're still going to go with whatever the original, code was, or like whatever that character originally was. So that can be confusing sometimes. And you could tell I kind of was used to the higher speed because I kind of was cutting it off quite a bit. Like when it's just so slow. It seems like, and I use that speed up button quite a bit to kind of zoom through the health bars when it's dying and that kind of thing. So
I'm with you. I get that way. Like if I'm playing Final Fantasy, like I'm currently replaying Final Fantasy 3, the import. Like I don't even care what they drop. Just get me through this fight. I don't want to read it. It's after you've done it 15 times and then you do it mind-numbingly for 1,000 more times. I get it. Let's keep on playing.
And that's how this game is, where you re-challenge gyms to grind your Pokemon. So that's I've probably fought this gym quite a bit of times to train this up. But you can see too where like Final Fantasy 3 probably is kind of a similar. I'm assuming has like a similar, since that was on the Super Nintendo, I think. Pretty sure. Or it might have been on the original Nintendo.
Well, no, it was original because Final Fantasy IV, what we knew as Final Fantasy II, was the first one on the SNES. But yeah, Final Fantasy III was on the Nintendo. But I'm playing an iOS port of it.
Port of it.
So.
But you can imagine, like, it's got the same type of like top-down navigation, same kind of fighting. So you could make, like, if you had scripts for like basically someone took the crystal disassembly of the code and made this, but like you could do the same thing for Final Fantasy. You could do the same thing for any, Dragon Quest or whatever, any kind of like RPG like this could easily be made accessible using these same methods.
So do I remember correctly, did your mom tell me you actually review games for the publication that you do? Do you go through it and check to see like how accessible they are, or am I misremembering that?
Well, in that case, we usually are picking game so the problem is most games are not accessible in the least. I think there's there's actually a telecommunications law, the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act, and I think video games are actually deliberately excluded from that law because they said it was going to be so hard to make games accessible. It is unfortunately like something like The Last of Us 2, like that's a huge landmark. They are the only game that's the only game right now that has that level of accessibility. And still some of those features are like auto jump over pits, auto aim, that sort of thing. So it's still not, I would consider it's accessible, but it's also more like you can play it fully. It's not like I would consider something like Pokemon and Slay the Spire more fully accessible just because you're on a level playing field. You don't have to not cheat necessarily, but you don't have to skip parts.
They've negated the danger potentially.
And it's still, and really, I think it's still probably a lot harder from a non-visual perspective, even with based on what I've heard from others that have played the game.
I mean, I was telling you off mic the other day that I took advantage of those features because I hate it in games when I'm walking around, and they've done a really good job of building the soundscape. But if I'm just playing on my TV and I start hearing someone talking, I have no idea. Are they behind me? Are they in front of me? So there was a thing you could turn on that had an arrow that pointed in the general direction the person was. And then I also turned on the color coding. I'm a big fan of the subtitles, but I turned on the color coding for the actual person speaking so that I could also figure out whether they were friend or foe. Because even playing the first Last of Us, I would often kind of do what we were talking about, like skipping on through. I'd be running on through, and Ellie would be stopping to look at something, and she'd have some dialogue, and I'd be like, crap, where was she? I want to go back and hear this dialogue. And by the time I would find her, she was already done. And Naughty Dog writes some amazing dialogue, so I wanted to make sure that I like point me in the right direction so I can hear what these people are saying and take advantage of it. So I definitely took advantage of it, even for me to be able to keep track of who's talking and where are they, and that type of thing. So it is very, very versatile.
Yeah, and that's the thing in general is that oftentimes something that's designed originally for someone that's blind, even like text to speech, is like what you hear on phone systems all the time now. And like I remember in airports, even I'll hear a voice that's like the Microsoft David voice on my computer is like saying, whenever you see something suspicious, that's Microsoft David saying that. And then even like optical character recognition, scanning print documents. There's all kinds of businesses use that to create a searchable index of their old paperwork and that sort of thing. So that's true for games too, or, audio description. If you want to do something while you're watching TV and not have to constantly look at the TV, you could turn on the audio description and just listen to the show, and you'll get everything you would need to as if you were watching it. So there's, exactly as you said, there's just because it makes it accessible to blind people, it also can improve the experience for someone that is sighted or doesn't have a disability also.
So I'm sure you're constantly out there as a gamer. You're trying to find games that are easily accessible for you. For people out there who are listening, who are watching this, and they're saying, I don't yet have the first clue about accessibility. Since you're researching this stuff and you're probably like, oh, it's got what I need. Can you kind of give us the sliding scale of like, if you implement this, I mean, I can play your game. I'm not going to like the accessibility. If you implement this, I'm going to like it even more. If you implement this, I'm going to be tickled because I can do fully functional things. So that if people don't know, they can at least look up these key terms, see what these technologies are, and try to find ways to implement them. So like, what's your sliding scale about this makes the game experience okay, this makes it fantastic, this makes it even more stellar?
Okay, so I would say it's going to be categories of I guess I'll give some examples. So like I was talking about Mortal Kombat earlier. So when I played Mortal Kombat, the old versions, I would consider that it's okay, it works well enough, and it's because at that point I could see the characters' pictures just enough after enough trial and error. I could see, I knew who Liu Kang was versus Scorpion versus Sub-Zero because of their, pretty high color palettes and that sort of thing. So I could tell which character I was picking. You could tell which character was on the left, which character was on the right. So I knew which one I just memorized who was me, and that, listen for and memorize like, oh, that means he's shooting a fireball. That means he's doing a flying kick. and you had to memorize all that, and that takes a long time, lots of trial and error, lots of losses. That's kind of the base level, something that's not deliberately been made accessible, but it's kind of it's okay. It's like Smash Ultimate. When I listen to people playing Smash Ultimate, I can tell when some characters are on the left of the screen and which characters on the right or in the middle. With the problem with Smash in particular is you're on a platform, so there's no indication of like where the edges are. So that would be something I could kind of play. And I used to play Smash the original all the time, and I still kind of do with my brother sometimes. But that would be one of those. That would be kind of the lowest. But I could still play it, but I'm not going to be good at it because I can't see where the edges are, even though I can kind of tell where the characters are. A game where you add all the speech, but you and this is a theoretical, but say like so Pokemon Go. If you made all the text in Pokemon Go accessible, but left the Pokeball throwing and the battling as it is, I could play that pretty well. That'd be kind of a midpoint because the mini game aspects of Pokemon Go are simple enough that I probably would waste a bunch of Pokeballs throwing something at a Zubat that's actually behind me because I didn't know. But I would eventually catch stuff. I would memorize where the attack button was. With all the speech, I could get to most of the interface, even if the mini games or trial and error. So that'd be kind of the midpoint. And then the max would be you have text to speech for all your menus, all that's read aloud, and then you have some form of audio cues to tell me where your where things are in your game, or like to indicate somebody, a ledge or an enemy or NPCs, that kind of thing. I hope that makes sense.
No, that does, because I'm just trying to think if people out there are like, it seems daunting. If you look up accessibility in games, it may seem daunting. I'm assuming that there's a bunch of techniques they could use, and so I was just trying to ask your opinion as a visually impaired person. What would be the key areas that would kind of give them the most bang for the buck? Because you'd be like, I definitely want to play that. And based on your opinion, probably a lot of other visually impaired people would want to play that. So things they could implement that would they could direct their focus on some of the best playability you would get.
Yeah, I think for me, text to speech, putting text to speech for everything written is going to be the key thing there. That is going to make a lot of games accessible, especially there are blind people that I tend to like, and this is just a personal preference, but I like to play a game where I know everything that's going on. I have a lot of control over what's happening. It's not just straight up trial and error. Like the new roguelike, I think it's called Hades. A lot of blind people, a lot of blind people are playing that and succeeding. Like that is apparently accessible enough that people are able to play it and do pretty well with it.
I think they also did Bastion and one more I'm forgetting. So have you played any of the older ones?
I've heard of Bastion, but I've not played it. But I have the Bastion soundtrack on my phone, actually. Okay, because if that's the game I'm thinking of, Bastion, where like the world's kind of broken apart and it's got a lot of like guitar kind of Western sounding.
Yeah, it was Super Giant. Sorry, but no, Hades is definitely Super Giant, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they did. They did Bastion, they did Transistor, they did Pyre, and now Hades.
Yeah, so there are blind people that have completely completed Hades. I was just reading a thread earlier today on if anybody wants to know where you go, if you would want to add some accessibility to your game and you want to know where to go and get feedback, audiogames.net it's an international forum for accessible games of any sort, and there's actually a database on there of over 600 accessible games that are existing right now. But that's where a lot of sighted developers go when they want to make their games accessible. But that's where I know like Hades is accessible because I see people discussing it on there saying, hey, we're playing this. Or I think 13 Sentinels. I see that mentioned a lot recently. So apparently that's somewhat accessible possibly. Odin Sphere is supposedly somewhat accessible.
Well, so I'm curious. David Dunphy, I interviewed him last year. He's one of the moderators here for us. He's got a game called Azul's Adventure, and it's a platformer. I would say more in the mindset of Mario. If someone's doing like a 2D platformer like that with that, what would be the type of things you'd want them to put in there? Something about like if you get close to the edge, some sort of danger alert, sensor alert, that type of thing.
Yeah, so there's actually a bunch of 2D platformers that are accessible, and there is actually a couple things you can do. So for like when you're coming up on a ledge, one of the most successful techniques I've seen is you have almost echoed footsteps whenever they get within, say, 5 feet of the edge. So like when you take a step, you hear an echo of that footstep 5 steps away, and then it gets closer and closer to the center of your stereo field as you get closer to the edge. Um, a lot
Interesting.
of a lot of those games have camera, so you hold down a key and then you use your arrow keys to kind of move around a camera tile by tile. And so I'd go to the edge and I'm like, well, I don't know where I'm supposed to go from here. So I'd take that camera and I'd slide it over. Is there a platform straight across? Then I'd maybe go up a couple tiles, or I'd go over a little bit and up to find if there's a platform above me. Um, I've never seen it done, but I think you could use sound effects too to indicate platforms. Like, so if you had like a constant pitch off, like if there was a platform diagonal from you that you had to jump up onto and then jump back down on the other side, you would maybe say, when you get to the edge, you would hear like a higher pitch, like kind of steady dinging or something off in the distance. And then maybe as you get closer to it, like on the same like y axis, that would get lower in pitch till it meets a certain pitch, so you know that you're on the same level as it as you're trying to jump to it or something. um, I've never seen that done. That's always how I thought it would be useful to do a platformer, to make it less of, let's take camera and scroll across, then scroll back up, then scroll across, because that's basically what you have to do now for a platform. But it is doable. I mean, there's quite a few of them out there now. Even a recreation of the original NES Mario game.
When you're thinking about pitch, I'm just curious, are you imagining from where you're standing almost like 360 degrees, and that the pitch would shift depending on if something's at 90 degrees from you, or 120 or 180 or 270, that type of thing?
And I'm more thinking like, so you have a pan, and I'm thinking of this in sort of the sense of a two-dimensional like side scroller type of game, like a
Uh-huh.
Old Mario classic style. So
Sure.
your camera audio focus, I guess, is sort of centered on your character. So as like a Goomba comes to you, you hear it off on from your right, and you hear it moving and making noise as it gets closer and closer to the center. And that's
Mm-hmm.
how you tell it getting closer to where you are, your character. So it's sort of a character centered camera, almost audio camera.
Right.
And then so once you have some sort of alert telling you as you're getting closer to an edge. There would be then, say, like if there's like I said, like a platform out in the middle of that gap that you have to jump to and then jump back down on the other side or something. There would be like a solid like dung dung or something like that off to your right, and then maybe as you jump, it would like lower in pitch as your character moved up the y-axis closer to the same level as that platform, and maybe even went lower pitch as you got above it. Um,
Okay.
and
I was
again,
almost thinking,
yeah.
I was thinking like in Mario, sometimes you can jump to the right up onto a platform, and then since you're higher, you can now jump back to the left on an even higher platform. That's why I was
Yeah.
wondering, is in space, if you needed to be able to hear a noise to know there's a platform way above you that you can't get to, but there's a platform in front of you, so more like a 25-degree up, there's a platform, but currently at 9 degrees above me, there's a platform. I didn't know if you were thinking different pitches for those type of things, like
And that
echolocation almost.
Yeah, and that could be actually something. So you would say, like, so you hear like there's a platform up above you, like near, and then there's like you said, like basically like you jump up to the right, then you jump back up to the left to get to the really high platform.
Yeah.
So maybe at first, while you're on this, and this is something I just came up with this as you said that, you would have two different tones. One tone, and you would use like spatial, so like one might be right above your character, and that tone would indicate there's a platform, but you can't reach it. And then off to your right, there's a platform. It's like a platform, but you can jump to it. So it's a separate tone to tell you, oh, you could jump to this platform, but you can't jump to this one, and like have them. So like the one that you can't get to is like above Mario. So you can hear that in the center of your stereo field, and then the one you can get to is off to your right. So you know you can jump to that one. So when you do jump to that one, now back to your left, that platform that was above you and you couldn't get to now has the sound, oh, you can jump to this because, and it's off to the left now because you got up to a higher level and now you can reach that platform, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, and something that I could actually even see as Patrick, like you mentioned, like echolocation and stuff. If you're thinking of a sense of playing it on a controller, so you have an analog stick, so you could even, if you were to take that analog stick and you were to move it around, and at certain points you were going to hit, or you'd be able to sense something in that area. So you move it and there'd be maybe vibration feedback on the controller. You hear a sound as well, and that can tell you, yes, I can't, there is something there. And a different sound, maybe one that's kind of louder, may mean that it's closer. And if it's more faint, then it could be that it's too far away. Even that's actually that actually
Like-
is something I think would be very interesting to actually have something built off of that, as even a the main character, that's their way of moving around,
like a
and
proximity alert.
yeah, and even to the player, like maybe the the player itself only has limited visibility. So if someone was playing it and they were not visually impaired, they would still have to rely on those features to be able to progress.
Yeah, and there's been games like that before where the idea is that you are in like that you're either in the dark entirely and you're trying to navigate without any sight. So that's like the actual premise of the game, is that this isn't just like, so that's actually kind of a two different approaches to audio games. The approach of it's a game like there's no like reason for the audio cues. That's just how it's presented. And then there's the audio game where it's more atmospheric almost, where there was like one where you descended into the underworld. So you would like, it was pitch black, so you had to listen for monsters and sneak past. It was like, kind of, it really suits itself well to horror games.
More subtle.
Yeah, it's more, and so like you would, I remember the level where you would like, there was like a demon pig or whatever, or boar that was going to get you, and you had to run on these different strips of material, and some were loud and some were quiet. So you would hear it wake up and start chasing you, and you would try to like get away from it, and and use the audio signals of like, oh, here's the fairy that's guiding you, so you turn towards its sound to find it, and that sort of thing. So it's yeah, there's kind of two different approaches there. I guess you could always merge them, but that definitely is an approach of actually making the fact that it is an audio game the point, as to like, this is why it's an audio game, because the environment doesn't have any light, or the character can't see, or what have you.
Aaron, did you play Alien Isolation?
I don't think so.
Oh my
I've
goodness!
heard
Well, it's based on the Alien and Aliens movies, with Sigourney Weaver. Because I was going to ask your opinion, because when I played that game, I feel like they were cheating. Because the whole point of the game is you have to sneak around, because if the alien hears you and you're too loud, the alien will come out of nowhere and kill you, because you can't kill the alien. But I really feel like they were cheating a lot and like making noises that sounded like they were right behind me. And so I wondered like, when you played it, if there really was a bit of a, an echolocation, if you're like, oh, the alien's in this other room. Because half the time I never knew whether it was on top of me or not. I crawled through that entire game. So if you want to give yourself like, high blood pressure, it's very, very cheap these days, and it's out on Steam. You may try to check out
I might have to check that out. Yeah.
Alien Isolation, because I mean, man, I had some serious jump scares. Don't play it at night, because when nobody's around, it's all quiet. Oh, make sure you have some people walking around talking and stuff, so you realize you are not on an abandoned space station with a xenomorph.
Well, that's one of the games, I think I showed it one year. It was there's a zombie game. It's a sort of a multiplayer. Now the echo picked up. So it was like a zombie game. So like one of the things is you're like going through a supermarket or whatever, and the audio of the zombie doesn't, like, you can kind of very quietly hear it if you really listen behind the shelf, and then as soon as you turn the corner and it's right there in front of you, then it's super loud right in your face. And I don't know how many times I joke like, oh my gosh, like when I turn the corner and suddenly there it is yelling right in your face, going to get, attacking you. But I definitely have seen stuff like that where you can't quite tell how far away they really are.
I mean, I guess to some degree they still got to cheat to some degree, because they still want you to have the jump scare too. If you're able to pick up on like echolocation or hearing something around the corner, you're like, oh, there's a guy that's going to jump out and scare me. they want to scare visually impaired people as much as they do visual people. So they got to fool us a couple times, I guess.
Yeah.
I actually have just something. So Aaron, you said that you believe that text to speech is probably one of the biggest things for accessibility, for making it, I guess, more accessible.
Yeah, for sure. There are a lot of games that I think if they had text to speech, because like I said, like people have, especially these days where people are designing, the audio design is like just as important in some ways as the visual design when it comes to atmosphere and such, and using 3D sound and all that kind of thing just by default.
Mm-hmm.
Blind people will often there are a lot of blind people that are very impressive to me because they are, I would say, much more adventurous when it comes to what games they will fight their way through and do well. Like I talked about Hades, like there's a guy that apparently has won as a blind guy, and I don't think there's any specific accessibility features in that, but he's won it like 8 times, or he's completed it like 8 times or something. So it's impressive what people will be able to pick out and use the sound cues. But once those menus are accessible, then that gives you a lot more accessibility. And like I said too, if it's a game that has any sort of like any kind of Final Fantasy game or any kind of like RPG or anything turn-based, even like a turn-based like strategy civilization types of games, a lot of those would be very playable. So there's a difference, I would say, between playable and accessible. Like playable would be, I can get somewhere in the game and I can kind of tell what I'm doing and I can do what I want to do in the game, even if I couldn't maybe ever complete it. And then accessible would be, I can complete the entire game without any sort of assistance whatsoever.
I would say with like something like Civilization, there's so much going on there. Even if you did have it read off anything from the screen, at a certain point you would just get bombarded with just too much information.
Constant information.
Yeah.
And there is actually a Civilization type game made in audio. You're like it's much smaller. You're like on an island and you're trying to survive. It's a little smaller area, but as time passes, you can pause the game, and that's how you go around and like look at all your stats and look at all that's going on. And then you make your choices. Then you unpause the game, let it run for a bit, and then pause it again and check check what's happened and read your status reports and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
To avoid being overwhelmed like that.
I have one last question from a complete novice game developer side of the fence. You're talking about text to speech. David, do you know about this, or Aaron, do you know if you've researched it? Like in a game, when I go to play the game, it's rendered. So it's not like I'm looking at a website where definitely there's code behind there that I can read. How does the text to speech? What do you have to do in your game to make your text readable? Because I kind of feel like they've already rendered the game. The menu's already rendered. How does that program get at that text if it's not editable anymore?
So that's where you have to add it from the beginning. And this is a little above my head, but I know there is a plugin or an API you can get access to from Microsoft for the Xbox to make your like menu text and stuff accessible. And I think it lets you just auto add those audio, like basically pre-generated audio files essentially for those menu items, I think is how it would work.
Or I thought maybe there's a call out. Maybe there's sort of function that can run that, like when you menu down to the play button, it sends out a function or a call that says, "Hey, screen reader, if you're out there, say the word play for me."
Yep, and that's how Skullgirls works. Is it actually like hooks into the screen reader and just sends the text to the screen reader's text to speech voice? It doesn't actually use its own.
Unreal Engine has the same thing. There was in the Coal Mine War project at one point we were working on a line trace that would come out from the camera so far and actually like read out. Some of the items would have like metadata like tags in them, and it would read out like you're looking at a rock, or depending on how it would be like wall, like it would like tell you that you're just walking into a wall or something like that. So it's like some of the engines have it built in to access the reader of your native machine.
Yeah, Corey got there first, but I was gonna mention that it is able to be built into the engine. I would also think, just from a personal aspect here, and maybe Aaron, you can give some feedback on this. But if a developer was to actually build the game with this in mind already, so let's say, for example, with like Final Fantasy, as we mentioned it a few times already. So when you pull up the menu, you've got your list of different menu options. So you can go to your items, your equipment screen, status, save. Do you think it'd be better just to have it read off everything? And also thinking back to the Pokemon game that you showed, it just read off everything that was on the screen. So do you think it would be better to read off everything on the screen, or kind of have the option for you to have an input that you could tell it what to read off? Like if you want it to read off the status screen that tells you which character, what the character's HP and experience points, magic points, whatever it may be from there. Or do you think it's best just to read everything off?
Yeah, so when you're in menus, and so in a lot of audio specifically games that are designed as audio games, so like there's a blind version of just like blind RPGs. So you would have a key to check by character. Like there is a key for hit points, a key for MP, and a key for stamina. And it would say like, Bob 500 out of 500, Jill 200 out of 200, what have you. Or you could go into their character screen and you could press like M for MP, H for HP, that kind of thing. That is usually how I see it in audio games, is like you dedicate a lot of keyboard keys to gathering information. Even in like a Mario game, you have, your HP, you have your, L for lives or L for level, that kind of thing. Or you could do the Pokemon thing. So when you bring up this, say like a status screen that just has information, have that read automatically. But when you're in a menu, only read the focused menu item would be kind of a good choice, I think.
Well, great, Aaron. Thank you so much for talking to us, for showing us some of the accessibility tools that people should be implementing into their games. And I think it's awesome that you're showing us some people who've already, fully baked it in, people who have a modding community who want to play these games, who have put it together, or people from the ground up have made their own homages. So that's awesome to see all that out there. And I did put up there the earlier the website you mentioned, audiogames.net. I'll put that back up there for just a second. That's where people can go and check to see how the games are actually rated, basically almost like a Rotten Tomatoes for video games when it comes to visual impairments. Is that correct?
Not quite. So basically, if a game has been judged to be, so like The Last of Us 2 might be on there, but like Hades probably isn't yet, because it's not completely accessible yet. So if a game is completely accessible, it is there. And they're mostly, I would say, like browser games, text-based, like if anybody ever remembers like the mud, pre-World of Warcraft style games from the 90s.
Like Gemstone 3 back in the day on AOL?
Probably. I'm not sure, but it's like where you like type and it says like you're in a forest and you can see, you have access northeast, southwest, there's an orc, you can get, you type kill orc and it would attack the orc, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I'm with you.
So there's a lot of games like that are, of course, all those are accessible. But I think there's like, it was over 600 the last time I looked. And like I said, a lot of them are like browser based or choose your own adventure, that kind of thing. But there are a lot of just straight up audio games or accessible video games like Skullgirls is on there. Sequence Storm, I think I showed. It's kind of a indie racing rhythm game. It's fully accessible and has a lot of good accessibility features. But that's also where it's a huge international forum, is why I think it's so valuable to people, because a lot of people, that is the place to go. I think if you want to know, if you like go on there and you say, I've got this game and I want to make it accessible, and you tell them how the gameplay works, all kinds of people will be very much happy to tell you what they would suggest on how to make it accessible. It's a very a major hangout for audio game developers too. So there's a lot of developers on there as well. Just technology savvy blind people are on there a lot. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on and opening our eyes to the different type of accessibility options we can throw out there in our games to have the widest audience play it. So thank you so much, sir.
No problem. Thank you for having me.